The plane was minutes away from takeoff when Emily, a calm and experienced flight attendant, noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. She'd been on hundreds of flights before, but something about this one felt off. The air in the cabin was tense, passengers restless, and the pilot unusually quiet over the intercom. As Emily moved down the aisle, checking seatbelts and trays, she caught a glimpse of a small, blinking light near the rear cabin panel, something she'd never seen behave like that before. Her instinct screamed that something wasn't right. Without hesitation, she leaned toward the co-pilot and said in a firm voice, "We need to leave immediately." The crew exchanged confused glances. What could possibly be wrong before takeoff? But Emily's tone left no room for argument. Within moments, passengers were asked to disembark. Some frustrated, others curious. Emily could feel their eyes on her, questioning her judgment. Even the pilot seemed skeptical, watching her from the cockpit window as people exited the plane. 7 minutes later, the same pilot's voice cracked through her radio, trembling. "Emily, come back now." The words sent chills down her spine. What had happened in those few minutes? Why did he sound terrified? Emily's mind raced as she turned back toward the plane, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and urgency. She didn't know it yet, but the decision she made that day would not only save lives, it would reveal a truth no one on that flight could ever forget. Emily froze for a moment, gripping her radio tighter as the pilot's voice echoed again, this time more desperate. The airport lights glimmered outside the window, and the hum of engines from nearby planes filled the air, but her focus was locked on that one aircraft she had just evacuated. Every instinct in her told her to run back, even though no one else understood why. Moments earlier, everyone thought she'd overreacted. A few passengers even laughed as they left the plane. But Emily's gut had never failed her in 12 years of service. Something about that blinking light, the strange smell near the back cabin, and the flicker in the control screen had felt too wrong to ignore. As she hurried back toward the gate, she saw a ground crew gathered, talking in hushed voices. The pilot, Captain Lewis, stood by the cockpit door, his face pale. When he saw her, he didn't waste a second. "Emily, you need to see this," he said quietly, motioning her inside. The cabin was eerily still now, empty and dim. The light she'd seen before was no longer blinking, but the faint scent of smoke lingered near the panel. Emily's eyes darted to the cockpit screen, where an alert had appeared, something about a systems failure that shouldn't have existed. Her heart pounded harder. It wasn't just a technical glitch, this was something far deeper. And as she exchanged a tense look with Captain Lewis, both of them silently knew the real danger hadn't even started yet. Emily leaned over the control screen, her eyes scanning the strange warning message that kept flashing in red. "Engine pressure mismatch, manual override required." She frowned. "That can't be right," she whispered. The aircraft had just passed inspection that morning. Captain Lewis rubbed his forehead, his voice low and uneasy. "I checked this system before boarding. It was clean. Whatever this is, it appeared out of nowhere." His words sent a chill through her. Outside, ground crew members were making calls, while a mechanic climbed into the cargo bay below. Emily's gaze drifted toward the passenger seats, now empty but still warm from where families and travelers had been sitting just minutes ago. The thought of what could have happened if she hadn't stopped the flight made her stomach twist. Yet she knew they weren't safe just because the passengers were gone. Something was still wrong, something unseen. Then, through the quiet hum of the idle engines, she heard a faint clicking noise from beneath the rear galley floor. She knelt, pressing her ear closer. It sounded mechanical, rhythmic, like a timer. "Captain, do you hear that?" she asked sharply. He crouched beside her, his expression hardening as the sound grew louder. The mechanic shouted up from below, "Don't touch anything. There's a secondary power surge coming from a disconnected line. This shouldn't even be active." Emily's pulse raced. She looked at Lewis, fear and determination mixing in her eyes. "If this isn't from the system," she said quietly, "then someone wanted it to happen." Emily's breath caught as the sound beneath the floor grew sharper. Faster, no longer a faint clicking, but a steady pulse. Captain Lewis's eyes met hers, and without speaking, both of them moved toward the rear cabin. The mechanic shouted something about shutting down the auxiliary power, but before he could finish, the control screens flickered again. Emergency lights flashed red, and an alert blared through the cockpit. Electrical overload, source unknown. Lewis grabbed the intercom, trying to contact the tower, but the line was dead. Emily's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out everything else. She could feel a faint vibration under her feet, as though the plane itself was alive and breathing in panic. The air grew warmer, the metallic scent stronger. She reached for the panel where she'd first seen the light blinking earlier, and hesitated. What if touching it made things worse? Then, she noticed something strange. A small service tag near the wiring compartment, one that didn't belong to their maintenance team. Her mind raced back to the night before, when an unfamiliar technician had been inspecting the aircraft while the rest of the crew waited in the terminal. He hadn't said much, only smiled politely when she passed by. Now that same tag bore his initials. Lewis's voice broke her thoughts. "Emily, it's spreading. The system's locking us out." The screens were flashing faster now, messages appearing and vanishing too quickly to read. Emily's throat went dry as the realization hit someone had planned this. and whatever was set in motion was seconds away from reaching its breaking point. Before Emily could respond, the cabin lights suddenly shut off, plunging the plane into near darkness. Only the emergency glow strips along the floor flickered weakly, casting long shadows. She heard Captain Lewis curse under his breath as the control systems went completely black. Then came the sound faint footsteps, echoing from the far end of the aisle. But the plane was supposed to be empty. Emily's chest tightened. She exchanged a quick glance with the captain, who grabbed a flashlight from the cockpit and moved cautiously forward. "Is anyone there?" Lewis called out. No answer. Just the low creak of the aircraft settling against the cold tarmac. Emily's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She followed him, scanning each row, her flashlight trembling slightly in her hand. Then, a reflection caught her eye, a small tablet wedged between two seats, its screen glowing faintly. She picked it up and froze. The device was connected to the plane's network, displaying lines of code still running in real time. Lewis leaned closer, confusion and fear etched across his face. "Who could have done this from here?" he whispered. But before Emily could answer, the screen flickered again. A message appeared. Asterisk override active. Countdown in progress. Asterisk her blood ran cold. This wasn't just a malfunction or sabotage, it was timed. And if there was a countdown, it meant whatever was happening wasn't over. Emily's voice shook as she whispered, "Lewis, we need to stop this now." Someone's still controlling the plane from somewhere nearby. Captain Lewis's hand trembled as he stared at the tablet screen. The countdown was at 40 seconds, and falling fast. Emily's mind raced, scanning the controls, the panels, the wiring, anything that could stop the sequence. "There has to be a manual override," she said, her voice trembling but steady enough to act. The mechanic rushed in from below, shouting, "The power's rerouting itself. It's feeding off the backup generator." Panic rippled through them. Emily remembered the auxiliary panel near the Galleon older system that wasn't connected to the main controls. She sprinted down the aisle, yanking open the compartment. Sparks flew as she pulled a handful of cables free. The tablet's timer dropped to 10 seconds. "Emily," Lewis shouted. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed the master fuse and twisted it hard. The cabin went pitch dark. For a heartbeat, everything fell silent. No alarms, no flickers, just stillness. Then, the power rebooted with a low hum. The timer on the tablet froze at 3 seconds before fading completely. Lewis exhaled shakily, leaning against a seat. "You did it," he whispered. But Emily wasn't so sure. Something in her gut still felt unsettled. As ground security arrived, she handed the tablet to an officer. He frowned at the screen, scrolling through the code. "This wasn't triggered from inside," he said slowly. "It came from the maintenance server, 20 miles away." Emily stared at him, her heart sinking. The real threat wasn't on the plane, it was still out there, watching every move they made. The investigation stretched late into the night, and Emily stayed until the very end, watching the security team trace the signal from the hacked maintenance server. Hours later, the truth came out. It had been part of a test gone wrong. A subcontracted engineer had been running diagnostics remotely and accidentally activated a sequence that overloaded the system. What no one expected was how close it came to disaster. Emily's quick instinct had stopped the chain reaction just in time. When the passengers were informed the next morning, many sent her messages of thanks, saying they owed their lives to her decision to act when everyone else doubted her. Captain Lewis personally called her into his office, his voice softer than usual. "You trusted your gut," he said, smiling faintly. "That saved us all." For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She just looked out at the runway, where the sunrise painted the sky gold, and whispered, "Sometimes, you just have to listen when something feels wrong." The airline later honored her for bravery, but for Emily, the real reward was knowing she'd made the right call, even when it wasn't easy. The incident changed the way her crew handled emergencies, inspiring new safety checks and communication protocols. Yet in quiet moments, she still thought of that blinking light, that strange silence before the storm, and how fragile every flight truly was. In the sky, trust and instinct weren't just habits, they were what kept everyone alive.